tended to. That wound, that the wound of the West really is something that Robert Johnson talks about. And
Like cowboys.
sort of, yeah. I mean, he associates it more with individuation than he does, firing
Mm,
up the saloon and whatnot. But yeah, it's that wound that's there that we need to
yeah.
address, and we need to understand the meaning of that wound instead of letting it fester, which the Fisher King does for so long.
That idiot. Yeah, that's interesting. I've not read much Robert Johnson. Love the music though. Good one, right?
Hellhound on my trail.
Yeah. Mike is now in complete
Yeah,
darkness.
he was
I'm
Robert
surrounded by
Johnson.
darkness.
He was a disciple of Krishnamurti's for a short period of time. He's a really interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I get the books at the shop all the time. He did like we and she and he, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One of these days I'll pick one up. Yeah, I love the Parsifal stuff, and of course all the Grail stuff. This is, you know, I think all three of us. This is kind of our one of our home base subjects in some ways. Even if we're not experts, it's something that is sort of endlessly generative.
I
For
think
anything.
it's the most like potent myth of the West, and it's super. The more that you dissect in there, the more you understand how relevant it is for the world that we inhabit.
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
I
So I
like how
was
you
looking
used
at.
the
Oh, go ahead,
term
Mickey.
can of worms before, and
Can
when
of
it comes to
worms.
these creatures and like sacred mysteries, it's interesting how so many of them are like guardians or protectors, or Ben, like you said, like sitting on this wealth that they're like protecting or hoarding or whatever it is.
Mm.
Mm,
Is that wealth literal gold, or is it the spiritual wealth that they're protecting? And what is that? Like even in Wisconsin, I think it's Rock Lake, there's like legends of Rocky the sea serpent, and like some, Aztec related ruins there that it's like said to be the protector of. And take it for what it's worth, but just it's interesting how that lore exists with the serpent or the dragon
Mm.
and something being hidden and protected.
Right, right, absolutely.
I've got here the it's called Lake Monster Traditions: a Cross-Cultural Analysis by Michel Murger, which is this really wonderful book put out by Fortean Times, I think. But it's just like an encyclopedic look at lake monsters. And something that I find really interesting that comes up in so many of these is the association with horses and how they all have this sort of horse-like head. Um, what is that about?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't. I've kind of looked more into like the Jungian um, sort of stuff with dragons and Tiamat, the Babylonian goddess, and we can get into Typhon as well, which is big with Kenneth Grant, obviously. But it
Sure.
seems to me that the dragon can often represent and then obviously this is so Jungian, but the unconscious mind, and the defeating the dragon is properly integrating the unconscious mind or the primordial chaos. Tiamat is the personification of waters and primordial chaos, and that's something like in chthonic deities often as well. Certainly with Typhon, that aspect of the left hand path through the tunnels of Set in the Kenneth Grant's New Isis Lodge, the Typhonian tradition, fighting the desire to become untamed, fighting the temptation of regression into like the chaotic childhood, you know? Like I feel like this is associated with the dragon as well. Like, because when you're a child, you're kind of just like, you're a servant to instinct, like to chaotic instinct, you know? You can't really
I
like,
wasn't.
yeah, right.
Maybe
You're
you were.
still
Uh,
you're still doing it.
I'm still a serpent.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Um, I think what something interesting that connects the dragon with the serpent is that like in so many of these traditions, different from today, where we have a dragon is sort of an air creature or a fire creature, something that really has little to do with water. But often these like lake monsters and sea serpents in the folklores of Europe and of Native America, they would sort of there would be no distinction between what we'd call a dragon and what we'd call like a lake monster. They would often leave the lakes, and that was sort of their home. Like I think that the idea of the lake as well, and or the ocean having to do with a sort of primordial chaos or unformed uh like realm of being, and then the dragon sort of coming out of that, the serpent coming out of that as a an emissary from the abyss is also a pretty rich path to cross. I don't know if we always think of dragons and these serpents as violent as, or I don't know if they could so easily represent um what the Jungian approach wants them to. I think they're often more ambiguous in what the tales talk about. Um, Not necessarily in like the the Grail tradition tales, or
Yeah.
or the older things where they're having to kill a dragon in order to stop it from terrorizing a town. But in the other kind of traditions of the sea serpents and the lake monsters, they're not always so straightforwardly villainous. They're kind
Mm.
of like representatives of the abyss or of forces of nature or that sort of thing. So sometimes I think they're a little bit more ambivalent or something.
Yeah, well, let's circle back to Nessie then, because I feel like that is truly indicative of Nessie. Like you can't really. It's something far blurrier, and it's harder to project those cleaner kind of archetypal frameworks onto it. However,
Sure.
it is a modern myth, and I think Robert Johnson, what he says about myths is that they're the dream of entire societies, which I like. So why is it that everybody is seeing this thing? Is there a genuine natural artifact to it? Is it some sort of collective projection? Is it, a Keelian kind of window area, or is it a tulpa? Do you guys have like a way that you lean on this at all, Mike? Do you
Yeah,
think it's
yeah.
like,
Yeah, I'm recalling sitting in your bookshop, Ben, the last time we did that seance thing, and kind of talking about like, well, is Nessie like the ghost of a dinosaur, like a plesiosaur, just like kind
Yeah.
of blipping in to focus like a ghost does? Um, but there's also like really interesting um, observations from experiencers, like with Bigfoot, who say like, one moment they saw a Bigfoot and then it like suddenly just kind of turned into a ball of orange light and like floated
Mm.
away. Like maybe these are like more spiritual entities are able to shapeshift or what may be. I think, it would be
Yeah.
bold of us to just like claim like it's one thing or another thing. I just don't think we know the nature of a lot of natural phenomena,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think we still
I
have a lot
was,
of learning to do as a species.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at this Lake Monster Traditions book, the cover, it's cover art by Fred Gambino, and it has this really striking
Freddie G.
illustration of a log, like an upturned log
Yeah.
coming out of the water, but at the same time, it obviously is like a lake monster. Like it is both of those things at once, and it really reminds me of Speaking of like childhood stuff, I used to like go on walk when I was like probably 4 years old or something with my grandma. And there was this one house kind of a few blocks away from my house that had this big tree, like a sort of shrub tree thing with like hanging branches that looked exactly like a monster of some kind, like a dinosaur. And to me, it was like I would go there and I'd see it and like, oh, that is what that is. It's not just a tree that looks like it. It is this weird dual entity that represents this form in my imagination, but at the same time serves sort of a purpose in the world as like a tree. So I think that obviously I was like a baby, but um, at the same time, I think that we can look at the world in a way where things can be several things at once, or it's not as much as, or it's not so much just imbuing things with meaning. It's more nuanced than that. It's hard to kind of explain, but that's why I think this cover on this book, on this Lake Monster Traditions book, is so good because it is at the same time both of those things, and the little man in the canoe is reacting to it in such a way that you would react to a lake monster, even though it apparently is just an upturned root. So I think that thinking of these things as representatives of the world that we've sort of forsaken is also a useful thing. Kind of like Bigfoot as sort of a reminder entity about what man might really be if we were to kind of give all of this up. Or maybe it's Pan or something like that, like a sort of a distillation of the chaos and order of nature. I don't know. Anyway, that's kind of what I was thinking about with, thinking of Nessie as just like an upturned log,
Well, there's
like
a
as or like, yeah,
yeah, there's a word for that in Native American lore for places that have these visually anthropomorphized forms. They There's a word that describes the sense that they are imbued with some sort of like extra spiritual quantity.
yeah,
There's one of these places by the Great Serpent Mound, which is a natural formation that looks sort of like a giant tortoise. And this place is supposed to be very significant based on somebody that I spoke to. So that's certainly interesting. And I think that, we're not alone, and it's not to say that like things exist exactly as these fixed forms, but that things manifesting doesn't mean that they're imaginal or that imaginal isn't real either. I know that gets into some sticky
yeah,
territory and can be kind of annoying for nuts and bolters or what, like, I don't know, like
you're right. Yeah, like,
what's
is
the
there a
word
snake
for
or not?
yeah, what's the word for like a cryptozoologist who wants the DNA
I
or
guess just
whatever?
like a flesh and blooder.
Flesh and blooder. Yeah. Geez, that gets back to the Grail, don't it? But
Yeah, yeah,
I guess I got back into the Nessie thing because of this whole saga with F.W. Holiday, which I just find fascinating. I kind of didn't realize how consumed he was by some effect or symptom of Loch Ness that was beyond just a serpent, or an existing out of time creature. He performed he assisted in the exorcism of Loch Ness, famously, but was also very interested in Aleister Crowley's presence at the Boleskine House on or near Loch Ness, in which the unfinished Abramelin ritual was performed. You can hear more about that in previous episodes and also our interview with A.P. Strange. He's doing some work on this topic as well, I think presenting in a couple weeks somewhere, I just heard him say. But yeah, F.W. Holiday, he after these weird symptoms started to arise, obviously he's spending a ton of time at the Loch, and I believe there's that other fellow, Felton. Like whenever you watch a documentary about Loch Ness, there's the guy who lives in the RV next to the Loch and has just been living out there for, I don't know if he still lives out there, but spending like a ton of time there for 40 years. I'm not sure if he's still alive, but just obsessed with capturing an image of the creature. After that one sighting, there's that kind of Fisher King wound, right? Like seeing that thing that doesn't exist in everyday reality and leaves that gash.
Nessie is the Grail for them.
Yeah, right. But Ted Holiday, check out patreon.com/consensusunreality. For just $5 a month, you can access our full episode archive, 5 years worth that's only hosted there. Regular exclusive episodes, which are ongoing and exclusively hosted at patreon.com/consensusunreality. Written content, a Discord server, and if you join our print tier club, you get access to our printed Journal of Shells, plus other printed and recorded materials in the mail. That's really cool, so check that out. Thanks for listening. As always,